Okay, are you ready for the reveal? Hi everybody, welcome to my very first YouTube video. I'm going to be showing you how to make this top. I'm also wearing it right now. It's designed to be very form-fitting, supportive for the girls. It has super comfortable stretchy straps so that you can wear it all day. You don't have to tie it behind your neck. I originally made this pattern to be a written pattern that I was going to sell on my Etsy, but I decided that I think this pattern would be more successful as a video tutorial because there's certain areas that I think would be more beneficial with just some extra explanation as well as like a visual representation of how I'm taking the measurements against my body, how I'm stretching everything. But that being said, I did write a written pattern, so there is a PDF that I do recommend checking out as well because I'm going to be talking to you and telling you a step by step, but I'm not going to be doing a really close-up video of like my hands and where I'm putting the hook and what the stitches look like and that sort of thing. So the written pattern will be way more detailed in that sense. I'm going to link it below. It's totally free. Check that out as well if you have any confusion along this tutorial. I want to apologize in advance for the sound quality of this video. I live on a pretty noisy street and I also don't have any like proper filming equipment yet. I'm gonna work on it, but it's the best I got for now, so just try to ignore that if you can. Please and thank you. The materials that you're gonna need are a 4mm hook and a 5mm hook. I recommend using cotton yarn because it's like a summery tank top. You're gonna be wearing it in more warm environments and cotton is a lot better for that. And then I also recommend a DK yarn or a weight 3 yarn. You're totally welcome to go smaller than that. I wouldn't recommend going larger. It's just gonna look better with a DK or smaller. If you do plan on wearing a bra underneath this top, I recommend putting that bra on and taking your measurements with the bra on so that you make sure you're covering the whole bra. Another thing about this pattern, because it's very form-fitted and it's meant to fit very snug, very custom to your body, I really recommend measuring multiple times as you go. Just because the stitches that we're using are tight, they shrink up a little bit. You can make an initial chain and then after you put a few rows in it, it can be a little bit different than what you thought it was gonna be. So have some patience with that. It is tough to make a super form-fitting crochet top. It's just, there's a reason there's not that many of them, but if you follow my instructions, you can have a perfect one like this. So I think that's everything you need to know before we get started, other than just keep in mind this is my first video. I don't have equipment. I'm just using my iPhone and a half-broken tripod. So just please be nice. I am going to get better at this. I promise. But for now, let's have some fun. So to start, you're going to make a chain that is the measurement of about half of your bust. You want it to be able to go from one side to the other side. You want this chain to be an odd number of stitches and then you'll do one more for a turning chain. So I did 63 stitches plus one turning chain. So 64 chains total, but it's gonna turn into 63 stitches. You're gonna skip that last turning chain that you made and you're going to make slip stitches into the first little chunk of stitches. I'm doing 7 stitches of slip stitches. This is going to turn into this little chunk right here. It will turn into the strap and then it also helps support the side of the chest. Depending on your chest size, you want about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of this. So for me, that's 7 stitches. Make sure you keep a loose tension because you are going to be working into these slip stitches. So you don't want it to get too tight. After you made your 7 slip stitches or however many you're doing, this is called the chunk in the written pattern. It's just this chunk right here of the tight stitches. So I'll call that the chunk. Once you finish the chunk, you're going to make single crochet across the row until you want to mirror this on the other side. So if you did 7 stitches here, you're going to do 7 stitches on the back end as well. So I'm going to do single crochet all the way until the last 7 stitches and then I'm going to go back to slip stitching. And I forgot to mention that I do recommend putting a stitch marker into the end of your chunk so that you know exactly which stitch starts the slip stitching. I put a stitch marker into my 7th stitch there. Okay, so I finished my first row, have my chunk of slip stitches, my single crochet, and then my chunk of slip stitches. So for the next row, you're going to do back loop only into every single stitch. So you're gonna chain one as your turning chain, doesn't count as a stitch. And then you're gonna go into that first slip stitch, back loop only, and do a slip stitch. So into all of the chunk stitches, so for me, my first 7 stitches, you're going to do a slip stitch, back loop only, and you wanna remember to keep a loose tension. And then once you get to your stitch marker, or the end of your chunk stitches, you're gonna switch to single crochet, back loop only, until you get to the next stitch marker. Okay, so now we have our second row done. Just slip stitch back loop only into the first chunk, single crochet back loop only into the middle chunk, and then slip stitch back loop only again into the last chunk. And now we're just gonna repeat that row that we just did of slip stitch back loop only, single crochet back loop only, slip stitch back loop only, until your work is big enough to cover from the under of your boob to covering your nipple. Okay, sorry about the lighting change. I had to close the garage door because there's just way too much noise going on out there. But anyways, finished this part 1 of the chest portion. I did 18 rows of the slip stitch back loop only, single crochet, back loop only, slip stitch back loop only. So here we have basically enough to go from my under bust to just covering my nipple. Right about there. So next you want to find your exact middle stitch and put a stitch marker there. And then we're going to do this next section, which is the neckline little decrease section up there. So to do that, we're basically going to split what we just did in half. So you put a stitch marker in your middle stitch there. Where did my hook go? And you're going to start the next row like you've been doing. So you're going to do chain 1, turn your work, slip stitch back loop only into the chunk, single crochet back loop only, and then you're gonna stop at the stitch right before your stitch marker. So you'll leave the marked stitch blank and you'll stop at the stitch right before. So I slip stitched back loop only into this section, single crochet back loop only into this section, and I stopped at the stitch right before the stitch marker. That ends that row. So you're gonna chain 1, turn your work, and go back the other way, single crochet back loop only until you get to the chunk, and then slip stitch back loop only. You know the drill. I've completed that row. And here's what we have right now. Now we're gonna chain 1, turn our work, go back the other way, starting with slip stitch back loop only into the chunk, and single crochet back loop only into the rest. But this time we're gonna stop our work before the last 2 stitches. So we're gonna leave the last 2 stitches blank. What we're doing is creating what I like to call a staircase. It's the way that we're gonna decrease for the neckline, and you'll see why I call it a staircase. So there's my last single crochet, and you can see I left the last 2 stitches blank. So we're gonna repeat that, making these stairs like we just did until it's tall enough to be the coverage that we like for the boob area. And you can see the little stairs forming, which is why we call it the staircase. Okay, so I ended up making 5 stairs in total, and that is where I like the coverage of my top. So once you get back to this side, you're going to fasten off. For now, you will end up coming back to this stitch later, but for now we're gonna fasten off. And now we're gonna make the other side, which is a slightly different process, but it will end up looking the same as the other side. So we're gonna reattach our yarn to this side. So not into the marked stitch, which is the very middle stitch, but the stitch right next to it. You're going to attach your yarn into the back loop of that next stitch. And you're gonna chain 1, which counts as your first stitch. And then you're gonna single crochet back loop only into all of the stitches until you reach the chunk stitches, and then you'll slip stitch back loop only, just like normal. Okay, so I finished that row. I'm gonna turn around and go the other way. So chain 1, turn your work, slip stitch back loop only into the chunk stitches, and single crochet back loop only into the other stitches. But you're going to go all the way to the end, so you're not gonna leave the last 2 stitches blank this time. Okay, so I completed that row all the way to the end stitch. And now, this is slightly different than the other side. You're going to chain 2, and then you're going to skip the first 2 stitches and you're going to single crochet back loop only into the third stitch. So this is how we're gonna make the staircase for this side. And then you're just gonna single crochet back loop only as normal until you get to the chunk, and then slip stitch back loop only, just the same. So the difference for this side is you're going to make the staircase by chaining 2 and skipping 2 stitches versus on the other side where we left the end 2 stitches blank. So I just finished making the staircase on the other side. So I did the same amount of rows as I did on the other side, and then I fastened off. So here's what we have so far. And you can see that it does require a little bit of stretch for it to fully cover my thing. That's because I like mine really snug and on the smaller side. Double check, make sure that your measurement still works for you. And now we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so I decided to switch up the angle a little bit for this part so you can crochet along with me. After you reattached your yarn to the end of that first cup that you made, you're going to chain 1, slip stitch back loop only into the chunk stitches, and then single crochet back loop only into the single crochet stitches like normal. And then when you reach the end of the row, we're going to start climbing down the staircase. So what that means is the 2 stitches that we left blank on each row, we're going to make a single crochet in. And we're not going to do single crochet back loop only, we're going to do a regular single crochet into both of the loops. So make a single crochet there and a single crochet into the next blank stitch, and then you're going to climb down to the next stair and do single crochet into those 2 blank stitches, and again into the next stair until you reach the middle. And once you reach the middle, you're going to take that stitch marker out and you're going to single crochet into that middle stitch right there. And now we're going to climb up the other side of the staircase. So to do that, you're going to move aside that chain 2 that we made, and you're going to insert your hook into that stitch underneath it. And then you're going to single crochet, and you want to do this over the chain 2, so you hide the chain 2 inside of the single crochet. 1, and then you're going to go into that second stitch that we skipped over. So this side's a little bit more tricky just because it's kind of tough to see what you're doing. But you can see we skipped 1, 2 stitches, and we made this chain 2 on top. So you insert into that first stitch right there, and you single crochet over the chain 2, and then you insert into the next. Again, the written pattern has good close-up pictures of this as well if you want to follow along with that. And then when you get to the last stair, you're going to go back to single crochet back loop only. So insert into that first stitch into the back loop and single crochet, and then continue single crochet back loop only. Hi, I'm editing and I realized that that clip got cut off and then I lost a little bit of footage afterwards. So what I was gonna say is single crochet back loop only until you get to the chunk stitches, and then slip stitch back loop only. And then the next row is going to just be like a normal row. So chain 1, turn your work, slip stitch back loop only into the chunk, single crochet back loop only into all of the single crochet stitches across the whole thing, and then slip stitch back loop only into the other chunk. So just a normal row. Yeah, sorry that that footage got lost, but hopefully that makes sense. And again, if not, check out the written pattern. Okay, so I just finished that row of slip stitch back loop only, single crochet back loop only, slip stitch back loop only, and now I'm gonna do that one more time. You can do this many times as you like if you want more coverage or if you like the look of more rows, but I'm just gonna do one more for mine. I just finished that row and then fastened off. So here I have my finished chest piece, and next we're gonna make the torso piece. So how we're gonna do that, flip our chest piece upside down, and we're gonna attach our yarn into the first single crochet stitch of the chest piece. So we're gonna skip our chunk stitches. For me, that's 7. So I skipped 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches inserted into the 8th, and I'm going to join that with a slip stitch. And then I'm gonna make a chain as long as I want my top to be. So this is where the under boob is, and I'm gonna make a chain that I want to go all the way down to the bottom hem of the top. I just made my chain. Mine is 36 chains, which will turn into 35 stitches because one is a turning chain. Skip this first chain, the turning chain, and we're going to single crochet into all of the rest of the chains. And then I'll show you what we do at the end. So here we are at the end of the row. We did our single crochet into the entire chain, and now we're back up to the chest portion. So what we're gonna do is we're going to insert our hook back into the same stitch that we attached this chain into, and we're going to slip stitch. And then we're gonna go into the next stitch over and slip stitch. Then we're gonna turn our work and we're gonna skip over those 2 slip stitches that we just made, 1, 2, and we're gonna go into back loop only, single crochet down the entire chain. Okay, so I finished my row of single crochet back loop only. Now I'm going to chain 1, turn my work. So I'm going back up and single crochet back loop only into all the stitches. Okay, here we are at the end of the row, and now I'm going to insert my hook into this next stitch on the chest piece, so you can see we're attached here. Now I'm going to insert into this next stitch and slip stitch, and then into the next stitch and slip stitch. Then turn my work, skip over the 2 slip stitches, and single crochet back loop only into the next stitch. So we're just gonna repeat this process for the entire chest piece. So just single crochet back loop only into all of these stitches, and when you get back up to the chest portion, you're gonna slip stitch into the next 2 stitches, turn your work, skip over the 2 slip stitches, and go back single crochet back loop only. So we're gonna do that until we are attached into all of these stitches, and then stop after the last stitch. So don't go into the chunk stitches just yet. So I'm going to go do all of this, and then I'll meet you back. And when you're doing yours, don't forget to check a couple times as you go to make sure that you still like the length measurement that you're working on. Okay, so I just finished that section. I did my last row of single crochet back loop only, and you should end down here. So now all I have left are my chunk stitches on this side, and my working yarn is on the bottom. And what we're gonna do, this is where you're gonna switch to your larger hook. This is the start of the back section of the top. So we're gonna chain 1, turn our work, and then we're gonna slip stitch back loop only into every stitch, including the chunk stitches. So I'll show you what that looks like when I get up there, but for now I'm just slip stitching back loop only. Remember to keep a loose tension into all of the stitches. I've put my last slip stitch into my last stitch of the torso part. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to continue the slip stitches up the side of the chunk. Okay, so there you can see it continues up into the chunk stitches, all back loop only. And now I'm going to chain 1, turn my work, and then slip stitch back loop only all the way down to the end of the row. Okay, there's the end of that row. And I'm just going to repeat that. So just rows back and forth of slip stitch back loop only into the whole thing and into the chunk stitches. And you're gonna repeat that until you get a section that's long enough to wrap all the way around your back and meet the top on the other side. You want this to be snug, so you want it to wrap around stretched tight. Okay, so I just finished the slip stitch back loop only portion. I'm gonna show you how it wraps around my body. So as you can see, if I stretch it really tight, it wraps all the way around and connects to the other side. I have to pull it pretty tight, but that's what you want because you want it to be really snug. Okay, so this is what that looks like with all the slip stitch back loop only. And now we're going to attach it to the other side of the top. So what you can do is you can fasten off and use a darning needle, or you can just slip stitch. I'm just gonna slip stitch right now because I don't know where my darning needle is. So I just finished seaming it up. That's what it looks like. You can see you go all the way up into the chunk stitches of the chest piece, and then this is gonna be the inside, the side with the seam, so you'll turn it inside out and you won't see the seam as much. So here's what we have. All we have left now is the straps, and then if you want, you can make a little center tie, and I'll show you how to do that. But to do the straps, you want to go back to your 4mm hook, and you're going to reattach your yarn to each of the straps. You want to make sure that your first row after reattaching is going the opposite way of the row that you left off on. The V's are going this way, you want to go this way, and then when you attach to this side, you want to attach into this last stitch on the inside because the V's are going this way. So you'll want to attach here and make your first row going the opposite way. Since we're doing back loop only, that matters. So I'm gonna start with this side. I'm gonna attach to where that little tail is. Chain 1 does not count as your first stitch, and then slip stitch back loop only into that first stitch. And then just slip stitch back loop only into the next 7 stitches, or however many you did for your chunk. I did 7. After you do your last slip stitch back loop only into your last chunk stitch, that's the end of that row. So you want to chain 1, turn your work, and then slip stitch back loop only into those chunk stitches again. So what we're doing now is we're only crocheting into the chunk because we're extending it into our strap. So you'll keep doing this, just rows of slip stitch back loop only, back and forth, until your strap is long enough to reach all the way up over your shoulder and connect to the back. Okay, I think that this is long enough to be my strap. So I'm going to attach it. Again, you can fasten off and use a darning needle to do this, but I'm just gonna slip stitch it. Make sure that you're slip stitching into the right side so that all the seams are on the same side, so you already have the one seam that you close it to the back to the front. So make sure that's on the outside while you're doing this so that all the seams are on the same. You get it. Okay, just folding this up and over basically, and I'm going to slip stitch it into like where I want it to be attached into the back. This will be the inside. You can see the seam that I just slip stitched, and then on the outside it's much more pretty. I'm gonna try this on and make sure that the strap is the right length, and if it is, then I'm just gonna repeat the exact same process on the other side. But I'm looking at it right now and I feel like I definitely attached that way too in the middle. So I'm gonna move it over a little bit. Well, I guess I'll try it on first. What's the harm? We'll see what happens. So the strap is definitely the right length. I like where it's at, but it's for sure too much in the middle. So I'm gonna take out that slip stitch, move it over to like, I should probably put a stitch marker where I want it. Yeah, split. I'm gonna split the difference. Okay, so the last step, which is optional, is to add a little tie that kind of like cinches all of this in. You don't have to. I kind of like to because when I go like this, or like, you know, whatever, it kind of sags and gets a little dicey. So I'm going to add the tie, show you how to do that in case you want to. And it does add a cute little like touch with the bow and whatever, so I'll show you how to do that. To make the ties, you're just gonna attach the yarn. I'm gonna do it on the inside, like right on the top row, inside of the chest piece, like right by the strap, like so. It's really not that important where you attach it. And I'm just gonna make a long chain. That's all it is a long chain that reaches from like by the strap to the middle of the top, and then is long enough to be able to tie a bow. And then I'm gonna have to find my darning needle, hold on. Okay, I have my darning needle. I looped this through it, and I'm basically just gonna weave this chain in and out of, I like to do it into the second row down, just because if you do it into the first row, it kind of like gives it a bumpy effect that I don't like. So I'm going to basically just weave this like in and out of the second row. Okay, it's kind of hard to not look at it. Let me make sure I'm doing that in the right spot. Until you reach the middle. You see, I weaved it into the middle, and I'm just gonna do the same on the other side. And then tie it in a bow. Okay, I just finished. Here's the tie. You can see it cinches it in more and makes it a little bit more secure. And like with these straps, so comfortable, can wear it all day. So here she is, all finished. I weaved in my ends and everything, believe it or not. Okay, well, thanks so much for crocheting with us. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow me on Instagram. That's where I post all of my designs and upcoming tester calls, etc. Chloe X Crochet, which is also my Etsy. So check that out as well. That's how I make my living. Buy a few things from there if you feel so inclined. If you made this and you post it, please tag me. I would love to see it. Hit all the nice buttons that you're supposed to talk about in an outro of a YouTube video. If you had fun and you like your top, comment and let me know. If you didn't have fun and you don't like your top, zip it. Don't tell anybody that. Keep that to yourself. I haven't really figured out what I want to say at the end here, so just yeah, hit all those nice buttons and be nice to me. And I love you. Bye.